Okay, here's the next one. I've dried the color with my hair dryer, the paint with my hair dryer. I'm gonna come back and sketch in the lines. You may not be able to see this, and in fact I might not be able to see this, but it'll be enough, especially for that one. This one is just going to be across here for this shape. This is probably not the best pencil for this, but it happens to be the one I have right now. And just make sure you don't try to sketch in an additional pencil line while the paint is still wet, which is, I'm probably going to lose that line. I'm probably going to lose both of these, but it's okay. And let's see, I think I'm also going to switch to my number 8. Brush. So I am going to keep going down the darker value scale, and this will be getting pretty close to the darkest that this pigment will go. I'm going to do this rectangle now, and I'm still sort of gauging, like, yeah, it'll still be able to go a little bit darker. But once again, it's okay if it's a little bit lighter than it needs to be, because I can just come back and do another little bit darker layer. So I'm going to do that and like that, just like the other layers, using a little bit smaller brush so it's easier to manage. Come back in and drop in some of the top, cascade it down. Make sure that the lower layer is completely dry. Never mind any sound effects in the background. It's a good example of if I wasn't continuing to drop in watery color up there and then cascading that down through the whole shape. I like that word, cascade, I'm not going to lie. It's sort of the perfect word. But then if I came back and tried to clean things up, it would create more problems than it would solve. I'm looking at this edge and thinking, speaking of refining, that this doesn't seem like I was very careful about that being a straight up and down edge. So I'm gonna start refining that edge, and you'll notice that because there's not a bunch of layers there, that at first this paint that I introduced to straighten up this edge, which I hope is straightening it up, will be a little bit lighter than the rest of the shape. But another good reason why I'm building up in layers and going darker is that it'll be quite easy to come back and create a darkness of that value so that you won't it'll still read as one value. There won't be sort of this lighter stripe. At least that's my hope. We'll see how that goes. Okay, thirsty brush. Da da da. Nice. Let's now I'm going to do this curvy, horizontal curvy shape, which is just representing sort of a tree line. I didn't have enough paint in there. Still want to make sure I keep my system. By the time there is this many layers, it can be a lot easier to activate paint that's already there. So just keep focusing on using a really light touch. In a way, I don't even need to touch the paper. I could just touch the brush to the pooling paint that's there and coax it around. And in fact, that's sort of a good way of thinking of it. So I'm just sort of creating this watery connection between the pooling paint and the paint in my brush. Let's see, I'm going to do a similar thing in that I'm seeing up here, I've got the thirsty brush there, and I see there's some that's been dripping down there, so nice. It might be tempting to say, you know, I want this edge to be a little bit cleaner, and to come back and try to do that, and then you would again be maybe solving one small thing but introducing a bunch of new problems. So best to just sort of, once things are drying and it's fairly consistent, if something is not too egregious, then just let it dry, and if it's really bugging you, then you can address it on subsequent layers. Yeah, it's come along. It's fascinating. It's fascinating, I say, how the value of one paint without other values to compare it to is a completely different thing than when there's a wide variety. Anyways, that's a nice, fun, long conversation. But I'm going to let that dry, and I'll come back and do the last, what I think will probably be the last layer. So, we'll see.